So hi all, my name is Livni. Can you hear me without this mic? Just out of curiosity? Yeah. I'll probably try a little bit with the mic and then I'll switch over. Anyway, thanks for the kind intro earlier, Raji. I am that guy who used to attempt running the open source meetings until I had a kid and started working at a big company and stopped submitting to open source software. But I think we've got some better organization now and lots of good people, and I'm really excited to chat with all of you at the bar after. We are going now, right? All right. So while this is getting set up, just give you a little introduction. I work at Google on the developer relations team. This is going to be a really fast demo. We just talked yesterday about putting it together, and I thought I would just show a couple of things as I go around to different conferences, talk to different people. I see a few questions come up over and over again, and same with people just discussing things on like the GIS Stack Overflow and on our forums we have at Google. And I just wanted to show you a couple of interesting things that we have that you may or may not be aware of. And then hopefully some good question and answer afterwards. Alrighty, so how many of you are familiar with Google Maps? Turns out we have a popular a website, maps.google.com, and in addition to the things you can do on this website, like type in CBS Interactive, you get a little info window, it tells you where it is, directions, things like that. We also have an API. And how many of you have used Google Maps API, just out of curiosity? So quite a few folks familiar with it, and some other APIs like OpenLayer was mentioned earlier, and quite a few out there. So this is a pretty popular one, and inevitably when people build a mashup, they do something very similar to what you see when you go to maps.google.com. It looks pretty much the same. Don't have the sidebar, although you could add that. You have the ability to add these markers. Inevitably they look like red dots, and someone puts an info window that has similar content. But you don't have to do that. You could style your map, which is a relatively recent addition to our Maps v3 API, and I think it's just one of the most exciting things that I've seen recently, because most of the time when you go out on the web, the maps all look very, very similar. And while we've done a lot of work to make our maps optimized for a lot of situations, and all of the users that come to maps.google.com, you might have a different story to tell. You might have, a brand that you want to match the colors to. You might want to have overlays that you don't need labels getting in the way of, and all of these different stories that, as you zoom in and out at different levels, as not the world's best cartographer, you can very, very easily change the colors and the styles of the maps. And yet very few people do this. So the main thing I wanted to go over in the first part of this talk, and a little bit of a demo here, is how easy it is to change the style of your map, so that if you're using Google Maps, there's really no need or good reason for you to use the basic default map. You should make the map do what you want it to do in terms of look and feel. So your map is not styled, but very, very easy to do. I'll show you some quick examples. The basic map that you get with Maps API, just a few lines of JavaScript code, and then I'll show you a little bit of how you could choose to make your own style that very easily you could turn labels on and off, look different, remove roads, highlight transit routes, invert colors, and so forth. So how many of you, just out of curiosity, have seen anyone make a mashup with styled maps like this? Oh, quite a few folks. That's awesome. So this crowd is ahead of most of the crowds I talk to. So I'll go really fast through this next piece here, which is going to be, pardon me, the fact that we have a wizard. It's a fairly straightforward wizard that just lets you easily change the style. So I can quickly invert the colors of everything, choose to say add this style to my map, zoom into a location. Simplify the roads or change their colors. And you can really quickly make some really ugly maps. You can make some pretty nice maps. And then all you have to do is basically cut and paste this code into your Google Maps mashup, and another 3 or 4 lines, and you have something that's more kind of custom tailored to your site. So I just wanted to point this out because I think when I got on the web and I look at all these awesome mashups, people have all this cool data that they're overlaying, you can really emphasize what the story you're trying to tell if you style your map. And this goes through for all the APIs that you're doing, and you already know this if you're creating your own tiles from scratch. But if you are using Google Maps, then please style your maps and make a more interesting ecosystem of maps out there. Okay, so usually I say that, people say style maps are nice. I have a second question. All of this data, and I do not know where to put it, how do I host it, I don't have a spatial database, I don't know what spatial database means. I have 10 million markers, and then my browser gets really slow, and what do I do about that? So that's a big common question. And I just wanted to show another sort of API that we have. I'm going to show sort of the GUI of this, but I'll go into a little bit more detail. We have an API that you can do a lot of cool stuff with this Fusion Tables. Fusion Tables, how many of you have heard of that? Awesome. How many of you have used, for example, the Fusion Tables layer in the Maps API? Or have used the Fusion Tables API to insert rows, download data, and stuff like that? Okay, so not too many, so that's good. Because I'm excited to keep this really short, I'm not going to go into these demos too much. Just want to show some examples. This one, I think, is like a classic example of what people often want to do on the web, which is sort of crowdsource data. So in this case, it's potholes in Spain, where you can really easily type in an address and add, I'm not going to add a pothole, but you can go into these potholes and see Madrid's full of potholes. I was just staring. It's true. And then you can confirm and say yes, you know, so 5 people, you could be the 6th person here and say yes, that is a pothole, and then I don't know, my impression from Madrid is no one will do anything about it, but you have a big list of crowdsourced data that's useful. So that's a really common thing, you know, where are these things around me and crowdsource all this stuff. So Fusion Tables, the API makes that really, really easy. You have kind of this SQL syntax. Someone clicks a little form, you have a question? No?
Yeah, newbie question.
Yeah.
Exploring the Google Maps API, there's like 6 different APIs. So which one would I use to make this?
Good question. I'll show a little bit of code at the end. It's actually like 2 lines, maybe 3, I think, that you add to the Google Maps API. I'm going to show you a little code snippet where you basically create a Fusion Tables layer. You give it the ID of the table, and I'll talk more about this in a second, and then you add that to the map and you're done. So
this is the JavaScript API.
This is, my apologies, yes, the JavaScript v3 API. So just as a really quick overview, the majority of map websites out there use our JavaScript v2 API, which was deprecated earlier this year. It's still going to be supported for quite a while, but we have this new, faster, better v3 API, works great on mobiles, all of that stuff. And it has new features like the Fusion Tables layer, which are not in the v2 API. So the v3 API makes more sense to use, especially if you're starting out some new project. So that's one quick example. I'll show another quick example here. I'll show some polygon data, which is something that's also tends to make browsers weep. So if you have a lot of polygon data, for example, the congressional districts in the United States, and you want to quickly visualize them, in this case, according to colors of today's pollsters' opinions on the upcoming elections, you can do that pretty quickly. You can click on these and have custom info windows and also reach Fusion Tables by querying the data and so forth. So how do you do this? What I wanted to do is just show a quick couple demos and then show you kind of how quickly and easily you could build this from sort of scratch. It's really not so hard. And then we can talk more about the code and the API and stuff. But I'll just walk you through a kind of a graphic example of how to build something like this. Any other questions so far before I hop into the demo? And can you still hear me when I'm half yelling? Okay, cool. So Fusion Tables was recently, we have something called Labs at Google where we put a lot of kind of experimental projects, things we're trying out. And Fusion Tables, I think, came out of Labs just about a month or 2 ago, recently. And so the URL now for Fusion Tables is google.com/FusionTables. And what I've done earlier today is I uploaded you can upload a KML, a CSV, an Excel spreadsheet, a variety of different formats of data into Fusion Tables. You just hit New Table and upload. And basically what Fusion Tables is, I should give the overview here, to highlight a relational database in the cloud. And so we have this concept of tables, and we can kind of do joins and queries and aggregation and other such SQL-like things on these tables. It's not a full relational database, but we'll go into that more in detail. So I uploaded to table this CSV spreadsheet, and let's take a look at that. So this was downloaded, I think, from the census.gov site. And basically we have, for each congressional district, a bunch of demographic data. I think there's about 40 or so columns here. You can see lots of exciting things. And then we can do some things with this data set. There's, I think, about 500 and something congressional districts, 530 maybe, thereabouts. And so what I'm going to do is show just some of the non-geo things that we can do with Fusion Tables very briefly, and then show you some of kind of the geo things that it can do. We're adding new features to it fairly frequently, and I'll show you one that was just added today in a little bit. But for now, I just want to show you some of the things that you can do that you might do with a regular database, sometimes with command line, sometimes with the GeoMeetup. So here I want to just aggregate something. I'll just choose the median age of the population grouped over the, I'll choose the two-digit district ID, just so we can kind of get an idea of the median age. And we can see for all of these districts, I didn't see the name in there, but you can guess this, that these congressional districts for each state, quickly get the median age. And that's kind of interesting. Good piece of information. We can see it's somewhere between 30 and 40 for most districts. And we can also visualize this in different ways. So for example, I could visualize this as a line chart. And there's just a lot of data here, so I'll have to scroll down. And we can see that the median age is generally between 30 and 40, with some outliers in Florida, It's kind of interesting. It gives you a quick look. You know, you had a spreadsheet before, and you're looking at Excel. You could have done a graph in Excel, certainly no problem. But this is, I think, a pretty nice interface for just quickly summarizing, aggregating, looking at your data. So that's enough of the non-geo stuff. Just to kind of give you a quick idea. I'm going to go ahead and clear this aggregation. Yes.
It sounds like there's a get embeddable code there.
Yes.
And you put that on your website.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that.
People change the data that's on that Fusion table.
Yep.
Will that update what's on that?
Yeah, it will. So I did not show off that feature quite yet, but for each of these visualization gadgets that we have, you can very easily embed them on your website by cutting and pasting a code like this into your HTML. And some of these charts are dynamic. We have, time charts and all of the Google visualization charts that you're familiar with, depending on the data set, might apply. And then, yeah, if the person who owns the table or somebody else, depending, we can talk about the permissions of these tables, changes that data, your chart on your website will be updated. So if you're concerned about that, you could potentially make a copy of the table that you then own. But I think this is, and I'll get into this sort of sharing of tables in a second, one of the most powerful things where you can share different source data sets, and people can come in and do comments on an individual cell, make changes, and so on. So I just want to really quickly get to some of the geo stuff because I don't want to take too long. And let's go ahead and go back to the main table view. Oops. And get rid of, I'll just refresh the page to get rid of that. Get rid of the aggregation options. And one of the things that we can do is merge tables. So this is basically a left outer join for database folks. And what I'm interested in doing is joining this to a table that has the actual geometries, the shapes of these congressional districts. And then I would have a nice big table with the attributes and the shapes. So let's look for one of those tables. I'll just search tables here for congressional shapes, since I know that will return a result. We have a lot of census data. A lot of people, random people, arbitrary people have uploaded lots of data to this. You can search over their tables and do various types of joins. We've uploaded some data. So in this particular case, I have the shape of U.S. congressional district boundaries. Let's just take a quick look at it. This was uploaded as a KML, using again GDAL to convert from shapefile to GDAL.